The Elimination Chamber match is being sold by Eric Bischoff on Monday Night Raw, and he describes it as a combination of Survivor Series, the Royal Rumble, and War Games in this new structure that's being built. Of course, here's where we learn it's going to be a 6-way elimination match. This really is Survivor Series '02, the creation of the Elimination Chamber. And as somebody who was a big fan of War Games and felt like even though they own the IP, the WWE was never going to use War Games, I was excited about this. What do you remember hearing about the concept before you actually got to see it?
Well, curiosity, number one. I like the general concept based on what I heard, but I thought when I first heard it, it seemed like it took a little bit more explaining than one would ideally want. It was kind of convoluted in a certain way. It's hard to explain it. First of all, because we've never seen one. We had never had one. The structure was brand new. So it had a lot of real positive traits to it, but I needed more knowledge. I needed more education as to what we're doing here. And then once I saw the drawing, what it was going to look like, got more familiar with the rules of engagement, then I became more sold on it. I thought it was a decent concept. In the very beginning, it may have taken a little bit longer to do the explanation than one would ideally want. So you could explain it very simplistically to your audience. They can carry that away with them and make their own decisions.
Ultimately, we try to put a button on this Kane Triple H stuff. They have a casket match. It's a dull match with no heat. The finish would see Shawn Michaels come out of the casket, super kick Triple H. Kane then chokeslams him, throws him in the casket, and fans are really excited to see Shawn. Then we get to our Halloween Smackdown, and there's at least a couple of things here of note. We get John Cena dressed as Vanilla Ice, and this is the first time as a WWE audience we don't see him as more of the prototype, but we actually get to see his rapping skills, which we know is going to become a big part of his gimmick moving forward. What'd you think of this happenstance? I mean, without Halloween, do you think we ever even learn as an audience or an office that Cena can rap?
I think so, Conrad, because he did all the time. He entertained people.
Okay.
So his work and his skill set in that world was on display more often than one would think. So he was always entertaining. So you knew that somewhere along the way, because John liked doing it, and it was kind of in vogue, that we hadn't seen the last of the raps. So, by the way, he's really good at it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, with this same episode, this Halloween episode, we see Stephanie looking for her father. She comes around the corner and sees, quote unquote, Vince McMahon in this crazy pinstripe suit and a giant Halloween mask of Vince McMahon. And he says that Scott Steiner, this new hot free agent, he's going to be going to Monday Night Raw, not SmackDown. She wants to know how that is. Bischoff takes the mask off and he plants a big one on Stephanie, who at first resists, and then, boy, she really gets into it and likes it. Now, I understand on the surface this is just creative about feuding general managers. But man, isn't it a little weird that once upon a time, Vince is in the fight of his life for his business. His chief rival is Eric Bischoff, who's kicking his ass on Monday nights, not every now and again, but 83 times in a row. More than that, but at least 83 times in a row. And then later he's given the opportunity to hire him and have him come on over, pal, work for me. By the way, now that you're here, could I get you to make out with my wife and daughter on camera? Cause that'd be great. That feels fucking weird, Jim. Does it not?
Yeah. It's so weird.
Yeah.
It is weird. Strange. That's inside the mind of Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Be aware of your journey. It's just, again, unless you know him real well, and then it's a crapshoot. Why? I remember that kiss with Eric and Stephanie.
Yeah.
She became a hell of a talent on air, a hell of a talent. I mean, pulling off a kiss like that and making you, and it graduates from somewhat being forced upon her to her transitioning to where, hey, I kind of like this. So, but Bish, that was interesting booking. You know, Linda and Stephanie. He may be the only guys in wrestling that have ever had that experience.
Right.
If that means anything, probably not.
I think he's the only person. I hope Eric Bischoff's the only person in the world who's made out with Eric and Linda. Because it'd be really weird if he was not the exception to the rule. It'd be really weird.
You said Eric. You said he's the only person made out with Eric and Linda.
Well, you know what I mean. Stephanie and Linda. Like I hope to goodness that Eric is the only person who's made out with Stephanie and Linda, because that would be weird. It's hard to imagine that in any other context. Like there's no scenario where, you know, now that Vince is retired, not working anymore, I just don't imagine Tony Khan's going to try to bring him into AEW. And one of the first pieces of creative be, could you make out with my girlfriend and next week make out with my mom? Like that's just not going to happen.
No.
I mean, I haven't asked Tony, but I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen.
I think you're onto something.
So the WWE,
it's not going to happen.
No. WWE this past week announces that they've signed Scott Steiner, who's 40 years old. So he's on paper October 22nd. Of course, you're helping run talent relations here. What was it like to put this deal together with Scott?
It wasn't bad. You know, Scotty had certain demands, and he's headstrong in a lot of ways, but he's a hell of a talent. So you bend here and you compromise there, and just try to get him a uniform and get him in the game, because he had a lot of credibility and name identity. You know, when he said Scott Steiner, you knew who you're talking about, and he'd been around and always been in a real good position more often than not. Some may say, based on what they heard in some of our shows recently, that you know he was just you know, he wasn't himself. He was not 100% healthy, but we felt like it was worth the gamble. And he's another guy that was a hell of an attraction. So I thought it was a good get for us. I really did.
Did you know, when you're saying he was headstrong, and I mean, do you remember any of the demands he had in particular? Was there anything that was really important to him that you could recall?
Oh, same thing. A lot of guys flying first. Once you understand the concept of how you're going to get paid, and you get your downside guarantee. Let's say your downside guarantee is $1 million. That's $1,923 a week, I believe.
19,000. Yeah.
Yeah, 19,000. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And so you cross that bridge. Always the flying first class was a big thing to a lot of talents, and it was a big thing to Vince. He protected the first class flyers opportunity very aggressively. So I mean, I've had to go back and resell and repitch something because that's the only piece left. And sometimes that's how I pitched to him. Look, we got one piece of the puzzle left to make this thing work.
Right.
You know, and most of the guys had a good reason. It was not just for the cloud of flying on first class, but
they're comfort. A big fella. Yeah.
The big guys, you know, all these, there's a lot of viable reasons for it. So I've always appreciated Tony. I don't know how many first class flyers fly for AEW. There are some, obviously, including myself. But I think that's just good management. And quite frankly, I probably wouldn't have signed a contract there if I didn't fly first class.
Right.
It's just too uncomfortable. Sit and coach with that fucking black hat on and see if you don't have a perpetual meet and greet.
Yeah.
So sitting up front, you get a little bit more, I don't say, is it privacy, exclusivity, or whatever it may be, but and that sounds very arrogant. Well, I wouldn't have signed if I didn't get first class. I might have relented on if the numbers are right. If the numbers are right, I just upgrade my own tickets. But the first class was a big thing, and I'm sure that it still is to some degree.